All right, everyone, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode of Grid Encore. I'm your host, Ben Schneider. Brandon Crossland is off tonight. I want to wish him and his wife, Kaylee, well. They're going through some car trouble, so they had to get that situation taken care of. I told Brandon, no worries, make sure you take care of that. But in the meantime, Matthew Bro is filling in for Brandon tonight. Matthew, how's it going? Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm doing well. Unfortunately, missed Grid post-race because I was too busy writing the story about the Cup Series on gridnetworktv.com, but very happy for this opportunity. Always a pleasure, Ben.
Yeah, thank you for filling in. And very similar story on the Cup side of things as opposed to what we're going to talk about here in just a moment. We'll lead off with NASCAR Xfinity, but before we do that, as always, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Thank you so much for continuing to invest in what we do here at the Grid Network. And if you like what you see on this evening's show and you want to consider joining them, you can follow the link in the description box below to our Patreon page, or if you'd rather make a one-time tip to us instead, if you're watching us live on YouTube, you can use the Super Chat feature, or you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below as well. Now, like I mentioned, we'll start with the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, and stop me if you've heard this one before, on the streets of Chicago. It was Shane Van Gisbergen. I think Adam Alexander said you have to spell Chicago SVG at this point. 6 races that NASCAR has run between Xfinity and Cup in the last 3 years. 5 of them SVG has entered. 4 of them SVG has come away victorious. So, Matthew, just to start off here, first, what was your reaction on Saturday and I guess on Sunday as well to SVG sweeping the weekend? And then his battle in particular with Connor Zilisch, I think, raised some questions. Jeff Gluck was asking, was that a fair move or a foul move, considering those two are technically teammates for this race? What was your take on the winning move in the Xfinity Series side of things on Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. My initial reaction was that makes sense. You know, honestly, that's one of the things, it just didn't shock you, right? We talked with Tanner and Joe on the other shows. It's like Jimmy Johnson at Dover, Kevin Harvick at Phoenix, I think Denny Hamlin at Pocono. Shane Van Gisbergen in Chicago, no matter what you put that guy in, he's going to somehow find a way to win. And even if it comes easy or difficult, he still gets it done. So the Xfinity race specifically, I mean, he kind of put on a clinic. He was on pole. He led over half the race, 27 laps. But Zilisch was one of the best cars, arguably the best car, because Zilisch didn't have the clean air like SVG had for a lot of the race, really. So the battle was, you got to love it, because I think we joked about previously. So last year when Zilisch came in and was winning a lot in ARCA, then came up, I was at Watkins Glen to witness his first ever NASCAR Xfinity Series win in his first start. So it's kind of like, is he SVG's kryptonite in the sense where it seemed like he was doing better at the time than SVG was. But now it's like these two all have this pretty much same sponsors, same team organization with Trackhouse and then Junior Motorsports affiliation, Red Bull, WeatherTech, you name it. So I think they have a little bit of a battle going on, the new gun versus the old timer, right? Even though they're both relatively new to NASCAR. Was the move fair or foul, Ben? It's hard to say, honestly. I think it was kind of a racing deal in the sense, but it was more or less experience versus inexperience, I think. I think SVG's done more road course races in general in his racing career than Zilisch has done races in general, I think. So it was about that, you know, Connor had the preferred line. He had for the restart, but SVG just had done it so many times before, knew what he was doing. But the battle, I think he did, it was a little over the top aggressive, in my opinion, but you got to do what you got to do. SVG's not there for points. He's there for victories. That's why Junior Motorsports is putting him in that number 9 car. That's why WeatherTech and Red Bull signed the checks over to get on that car. Granted, they do the same thing for Zilisch, right? But it was funny. Junior said he came up to Zilisch and was like, oh, it was kind of an aggressive, or it was an aggressive move. Sorry that happened to you. And then he goes up to SVG and he's like, damn right, SVG, that's how you do it. So a little bit of that. But yeah, I think it was more of a racing kind of thing. It just happens. But now I think Zilisch is going to race SVG a little harder. And I think that what's going to make that more awesome, in my opinion. So that's my long answer to that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that, you know, if these two hadn't been teammates for this race, technically speaking, of course, with Junior Motorsports, SVG getting in that number 9 car, Zilisch, of course, in the 88 full time. If that hadn't been the case, then I think, you know, we wouldn't be talking much of was this fair, was this foul? It was probably a little bit aggressive, but I think especially on a street course racing NASCAR stock cars, you have to expect that. I know Zilich said, maybe he expected a little bit more grace in that situation, and maybe it does give him a license to go a little bit harder at SVG should those two meet on the track again in the near future. But I think in terms of the actual finish, how it played out, not too much that Zilich can necessarily complain about here. And he still came across the line in second place. It'd be one thing if he had hit the wall and, had his day ruined and been the last car in the lead lap or been taken out in the closing laps or whatever. But that wasn't the case at all here. I think, when you're driving a stock car, you have to expect that Button's going to be racing a little bit, especially on a tight, narrow street circuit. And, SVG only gets a few of these races a year now. Obviously, he's now full-time in the Cup Series trying to make that transition. So continuing the trophy hunting theme, I guess you could say, even though he's not with Colleague technically anymore. How badly he wanted this one and to pull off the weekend sweep, which he ultimately ended up doing on Sunday as well. So I think that, again, we'll see the next time these two are close to each other on the track. It might get a little bit more aggressive than would have previously been expected. But as for right here, right now, I don't think there's too much to it here. And I think both of these drivers, despite their differences in experience, put on a heck of a show and treated the fans in Chicago to something special in Saturday's race. And I want to give a shout out to Denver as well, one of our regulars. Good to see you here in the chat. SVG was showing Connor Zilich some tough love, and his apprentice showing Connor, if you leave a door open against a supercars legend, you expect that he's going to run right through it. Plus, SVG got some supercars tricks for Connor at Sonoma that he won't like, but he will learn it the hard way and keep into his repertoire set. Yeah, of course. We just heard, I believe, was announced today that was supposed to be a Ross Chastain race coming up this weekend at Sonoma for that number 9 car, but understand that SVG is going to get a shot to defend his victory there at that track as well. So we'll see if he can maybe pull off the double again. Who knows here? And again, I will say the same thing I said about Suarez here on this show. I try to be universally consistent. I do not like the argument that, you just don't like Cup drivers in Xfinity when it's Kyle Busch. If it's anybody else, you don't complain. I tend to complain no matter who it is. Even with Daniel Suarez, as special as that moment was, I was still like, I'm only 90% okay with this because it's the principle of the rule allowing here. But of course, in a situation like that, I think the pros outweigh the cons of Suarez getting to celebrate in front of his home crowd. So I couldn't be too mad about that one, and I can't be too mad about this one either. Obviously, SVG, as much as he is continuing to improve on the ovals, I think still has a long way to go before we see him competing for Cup Series wins. We might see him start to do that the back half of this year and into next. Who knows? But this is an opportunity where he knows he only gets a few of these every year to show what he can do on the road and street circuits. And he wasn't going to give this one to Connor very easily, and ultimately ended up getting the job done. So again, congratulations to him, and we'll see what he can do this week on a rare back-to-back road course weekend for NASCAR, and we'll see what we get when it comes time for Sonoma in just a few days here. Now, on that note, let's transition here, and let's just do a bit of an open segment here before we move on to some of our other series that we cover. Matthew, there's been a lot of talk about coming to the end of this 3-year deal for the Chicago street circuit. It sounds like the city wants to potentially re-up for another couple of years, maybe move it away from the July 4th weekend to improve logistical experience for the fans a little bit. But I just want to get your thoughts on how encouraged you are by what we've seen the last 3 years, and do you think we should continue to go back to Chicago? Would you rather us try a city like San Diego? We've even heard Philadelphia might be on the cards, having some conversations there. Do you think there's room for more than one street circuit on the calendar? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting. In my opinion on Chicago, I am a big road course guy. I know a lot of traditional NASCAR fans aren't. I personally love it. I think just the racecraft that we're able to see at the Cup level, at the Xfinity level, and heck, even the Truck Series, when Corey Haim's not leading 99 laps of the race out of 100, they really put on a show. And I think Chicago was one of the best, in my personal opinion. I know the rain, thankfully, didn't mess up this year, but obviously the previous 2 years it did. SVG was probably hoping it didn't rain last year, else he probably would be 4 for 4 or 5 for 5 at Chicago on the street course. But I love the idea of it. I really hope they do consider expanding it. I think it's an absolute great point that's being made. I think you should move it off the July 4th weekend, give it a different time, have better logistics, and it really has done a lot for Chicago's economy, I feel, too. I know the reports came out. I think million. I'm trying not to pull a number out of thin air. I didn't really look into it as much as I should have, to be honest with you. But I know it was in the millions what it was able to generate over the last couple of years. So if it ain't broke, I guess don't fix it in that sense, right? But there are two places that I would really love to see NASCAR go. So please hear me out, all the viewers. Denver, hear me out. I know you're a regular on this one. And I know Denver and we've chatted too on some of the other pre-race shows. There are two places I would really love a NASCAR street course. One is we're going to head to where the IndyCar Series is in a couple weeks, Exhibition Place in downtown Toronto. I think that would be awesome in my personal opinion, just because one, it's only like a 1.8 mile course, so it's not too long, not too short in that sense. There's some high-speed corners as well, 11 turns. But it would be the idea of NASCAR loves to expand their market, right? That's why they were in Mexico City. Now, from a more logistical, I guess, common sense standpoint, if you want to expand in the Americas, you're already in Mexico, go up to Canada. It's only about 300 miles, give or take, from Michigan. It's only 300 miles away from Watkins Glen, the two most northern tracks. Why not go there? Expand that Canada audience as well. I know you have the NASCAR Canada Series, but crap, bring the Cup Series, bring the Xfinity Series up there. Even bring the trucks if you want. You probably only can do one or two or three, not three, but one or two, you know what I mean? So I think that would be really awesome. You can kill two birds with one stone. You can keep a street course race, but you can also expand your global audience, even if it's still in the Americas in the sense. So I recommend NASCAR take a look into going to Exhibition Place in downtown Toronto. I think that would be awesome. Another place which is going to catch a lot of people off guard, I think there's a motorsport that races in this area. It's a street course. It's in America. It's the pinnacle of motorsport in the sense. That's why I'm using quotes. I think NASCAR should try a Las Vegas street course. And I know it's going to be crazy, so I love your reaction there. And just hear me out for a second, right?
All right.
NASCAR loves to say they want to stay west. A lot of drivers come from west, whether it's Bakersfield, California, so on and so forth. But if you notice in a trend, whether it's late model tracks or even at the top level with Fontaine or Auto Club, that's gone. Irwindale, gone. Saugus, gone. All these tracks are dying out. There's not really a lot of tracks as much. If you look at the Cars Tour West schedule, they really go to the same places multiple times because there just isn't a lot of places to go. So if you can stay west, maybe not go all the way to California, you can go to the Las Vegas Strip where Formula One races. Granted, their course is 3.8 miles. Let's shorten it a lot. Let's do 1.8. So I was doing some research into it. You can keep the strip, the Las Vegas Strip, and the sphere in the sense. So you can have like a 1.8 mile course. So you can keep the high-speed corners. You could still use the amazing scenery. A lot of people can see it with the strip, with the sphere. You're obviously not going to go as fast as Formula One, and obviously their track is 3.8 versus the 1.8 that I'm proposing here with absolute no money in my pocket to pitch this idea. But it would just be kind of an awesome opportunity. And plus, if you do a double weekend in the sense where you can race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, which is only about 20-25 minutes south of the Las Vegas Strip, I believe, or it might be north. I think it's south, though. You can do the weekend where you pack up your road course car, you pack up your short track car, and you go from Charlotte or wherever you are in North Carolina, head out there, stay there a couple weeks. And I think it just makes more logistical sense. So I think that would be awesome. So those are my two ideas. I think we should go to Toronto, and I think they should go to maybe the Las Vegas street course. Obviously, what Formula One does, just a lot shorter. And I'll read Denver's comment. Chicago street course should be the OG street course for NASCAR, like Adelaide in the supercars, and make another 2 street courses on the schedule as well. See, I love road courses. One thing I am pro, and I'll let Ben answer this as well. I love the idea of NASCAR's schedule and how they split it up. I feel like if you do like 6 street course, 6 short tracks, 6 super speedway, 6 whatever, I like that because it shows balance. It shows motorsport. A lot of other series don't do that. Formula One's all road course. IndyCar's mostly road course with the occasional oval. But so I think I love what NASCAR does. It just sucks. I think they have such great courses. You don't want to put too many street courses out there because if COTA loses a date, I will be depressed. I love COTA. Watkins Glen, I'm a New Yorker. I absolutely love Watkins Glen in that sense too. So I would hate to see them lose dates, but I want to hear your thoughts, Ben. Sorry for ranting on, but those are my two.
You're all good. Yeah, no, I think that, I appreciate where Denver's coming from, but I think, when you have a 36 race schedule, I think once you get past 6 courses where you're turning left and right, you're starting to get a little bit road course heavy. And then I think of those 6, if more than 2 of them are street courses, that would mean no more than 3 road courses if you've got 3 street circuits to go with it. So I think that that's probably a little much as well. I think there might be room for a second if Chicago is going to be the OG street course and become a new annual tradition. Who knows? Maybe in 40 years it's as big as the Long Beach Grand Prix is for IndyCar. We'll see. They've got a long way to go to replicate that. But I think that there are a lot of good ideas there. The reason I don't know about Las Vegas is because of the proximity to the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and I don't know if you want to keep that on the schedule. Obviously, we go to Chicago now. Chicagoland, as Carson, host of ours video, showed, is starting to get a little overgrown. It's not beyond the point of no return by any means yet, but it would need probably about 6 months of TLC before we thought about bringing that track back. And if we did, maybe we take the street race somewhere else to try to go to a different market. But I'm going to be a hypocrite here because I know that we have races at Dover and Pocono. I know Denny Hamlin was suggesting we should do kind of a street oval where it's just 4 90-degree corners kind of going in a circle there. Xfinity Racing, who's headquartered in Philadelphia's backyard, of course, posted this tweet suggesting a street circuit around Philadelphia City Hall. I don't know how much of this was simply in jest responding to Hamlin there, but there you go. That would maybe be a potential option as well. I've always said racing on Broad Street would be cool, by the stadiums and everything. But if they're serious about these talks with Philadelphia, then I don't know. Xfinity, I guess, has it covered. Maybe they could sponsor the entire weekend. You wouldn't have to worry about that either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of different options that you could come up with here and suggestions that you could put in the box, so to speak. But again, I think what Chicago has done, I'm glad that the weather held off. It's a shame how the Cup Series race ended. And I think, and Denny said this on his podcast today too, they're never going to admit to this, but I can't help but think that I don't know what the worst excuse would be. We didn't see the severity of Cody Ware's accident, or we knew that the rain was coming, and we wanted to make sure that the rightful winner, so to speak, won the race, and we didn't have chaos of drivers on old slick tires on an overtime restart with the rain approaching. I can understand that, but I think in this particular case, it was pretty obvious that the caution needed to be thrown immediately. But again, I'm glad that we got through the weekend without too much weather problems for once here in Chicago. And I think that, again, there are still some logistical issues that need to be ironed out, but I would certainly welcome it back on the schedule for 2026 and beyond. If you do that, maybe you could go to one more like a San Diego. We'll see how deep they get into those talks. I know they want to get back in that Southern California market. There's obviously a big population out there and a big opportunity to expand their reach, especially now that Auto Club's gone. But I think we'll just have to wait and see how the schedule unfolds for 2026. One more comment from Denver here. Toronto is a fantastic place to hold with IndyCar as well, plus Las Vegas street course, fantastic with modifications of F1 Vegas or Belle Isle in Detroit. That's an interesting option there, especially now that IndyCar's taking the race downtown. I don't know if Belle Isle would be make logistical sense for NASCAR Cup or a lower tier series like that. I know, Matthew, you mentioned Canada. Obviously, the Truck Series used to race most sport, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, before the pandemic, I think, kind of killed that race, unfortunately. But that was always a popular stop on the schedule. So I'm sure our neighbors to the north would love the opportunity to have a truck race back again, or even Xfinity Cup as well. That could be another option if they're serious about expanding globally. But again, you've already got the Mexico race. I don't know that you want to really go much beyond 2 international races a year, at least for the Cup and Xfinity Series, so to speak. So, again, the schedule is so long and so taxing on the drivers and teams as it is. But adding a second international trip, anything beyond that, I think would be starting to push it a little bit, especially since you've already got a 36 race schedule. But Matthew, if you have any final thoughts on this topic, I'll let you have the final word here, and then we can move on to Indy next.
Yeah, I was going to say, knowing NASCAR, they would probably schedule Mexico City and a Canada race in Toronto back-to-back weeks, just by the way it seems sometimes what they're scheduling. But no, I think you made some great points there, too. It would just be fascinating, and as much as I love the idea of Chicagoland you mentioned, I would hate for it to be the one to replace Chicago. And I think, in my opinion, NASCAR seems to be, or I guess the Chicago Street Course, I think, in my opinion, NASCAR seems to be a little, they're not going to willingly take a date away from a track they own and risk that money to go elsewhere to a track where they don't own. And Denver says, anyway, street racing is the future of NASCAR. I think it could very well be. And I think if the NASCAR EV series, whenever that happens, I think perfect street courses. And if it's a separate thing, it's not going to replace anything. No, we've talked about that many times before. But if you do a small schedule where you're on street courses like that, I think that'd be a perfect opportunity. Because I don't think they'll run ovals. I don't think that's really a smart idea. Could you imagine at like one of a short track? I don't think that would work. But if you went to the Chicago street course like Raja and David Reagan and Brent Cruz did for their not tutorial, but like their showcase. So, yeah, I really like the street course racing. I think ever since I joined Grid Network, I've really appreciated more road and street course racing, especially getting to know SVG back before he ever made a NASCAR start. I think that's been a highlight of my time here.
Yeah, I'm gonna slightly disagree. Actually, I could see them at like a Martinsville or Richmond potentially if that's a new series that gets off the ground, as opposed to like the Daytona Oval or Talladega or a track like that. I don't think I don't know, but the EV technology is there yet to be able to sustain 200 miles an hour wide open at Talladega. But Martinsville potentially, maybe it could be a lot like Formula E. I think mostly maybe that's how you introduce street racing to NASCAR. I mean, I would think maybe with emissions laws getting a little bit more strict, that might be a little bit easier to work around. But that's maybe why Formula E, has gotten more street races in major cities as well. And then you could still do a couple of traditional road courses and maybe some short ovals to kind of feed both markets with that, despite the fact that the traditional hardcore Facebook fans might say they have no interest in an EV series for NASCAR. Maybe there's somebody out there that would show up to a Martinsville race nonetheless there. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. I think that might be a good way, again, to introduce the sport to people in those cities, bring the sport to them, so to speak, give them a taste of it through an EV series, and then maybe they become a fan for life and they start coming out to Cup races after that. Who knows?
Hey, I mean, Flow Racing maybe could have a contract like they do ARCA or the Cars Tour as well. I think Kevin Harvick's Kern County Raceway would be a perfect oval for an EV series. Just to introduce them to the West Coast in a sense, but also introduce them. I think California is more pro EV than a lot of other NASCAR states, so I guess we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, it's all talk right now between you and I, but maybe we look back in the YouTube archives 5 years from now and we could be having a completely different conversation.
Yeah, no doubt. We move on now to Indy NXT at Mid-Ohio. And again, not too much of a surprise who pulled into victory lane. It was Dennis Hauger and his championship rivals Kyle Collette and Lucky Hughes ended up rounding off the podium there. But the big story was a very frightening accident between Sebastian Murray and Ricardo Escoto. Fortunately, both drivers and all the marshals and cameramen in the area were okay. But a simply horrifying crash. Matthew, I don't know if you got a chance to saw it. I was actually watching it live when it happened on FS1. They actually had to red flag the race, and then they brought the IndyCar series out for their morning warm-ups, and then the race finished later in the morning, into the early afternoon on FS2. And, of course, Hauger ended up taking the win. But do you have any thoughts on the incident between Murray and Escoto, and who was at fault there, if anybody?
My first initial thought was, damn, like that was very frightening and scary, because I wasn't watching it live, but I went back, watched the replay, and I've never seen, I hate the idea of this, but a lot of the lower tier motorsports series, lower tier as in not the top level, right? So you say Xfinity, Truck, ARCA, then you say Indy NXT. I hate when their videos I like when they get millions of views, but you hate that it's under that circumstance, right? And automatically, like I was looking through, and whether it was X, Instagram Reels, all that TikTok, it was already in the millions of this accident. A lot of it, in my opinion, I watched it a couple times, maybe not as much as you, but I think it was more of a racing deal. However, I will like to say, I think Murray had a racing line, but I felt like Escoto was kind of side drafting, and then I think Murray kind of came off that line, and then when you were in open wheel cars and you go like this, you go like that. So that's what happened inevitably, yeah. And it sucks for both of them. You never want to see that because within 2 seconds your life can change. But thankfully that everyone involved was safe, and I'm so happy that they build these cars a lot safer than they used to be. Because if this was pre-internet times, even 10, 15 years ago, we could be having a whole different conversation. It'd be in a more somber mood about it. So I think, in my opinion, it was more of a racing deal, but it seemed like kind of Murray came off his line a little bit, and Escoto was doing a little bit too close of side drafting, because I think if he kept the outside line, I know the Gran Turismo movie, which I don't think you've seen yet, the reference is the racing line in video games. So I think if he took the unorthodox racing line, Escoto did, I think they wouldn't have wrecked. But it happens. They're both okay. That's really all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, pre-Halo, for sure. We could be having a different conversation once again. But, yeah, so I've seen people – I think the spectrum right now is kind of racing incident to 100% on Escoto. I think Jack Harvey took the more diplomatic response when he was in the booth and said he thought it was a racing incident. I know my fellow staff writer at LastCar.info, William Soki, was very critical of Escoto and said, it's time to maybe have a serious conversation about him, because even Kevin Lee was saying last year the stewards were getting very familiarized with his driving style. And I tend to agree with Will in the sense that I felt like, maybe you could make the argument Murray came up a little bit, but I think Escoto certainly had much more room to his outside of a slight right-hander, and to be getting that close that early in the race on a straightaway in open wheel cars, I think was just a bit of an unnecessary risk. And also you have to take into account Murray was following the racing line of the cars in front of him, and he was the car in front of the battle between him and Escoto as Escoto was approaching. So Escoto certainly had a better view of where both cars were relative to each other on the straightaway. So I would tend to lean Escoto being primarily at fault there, but of course still very thankful regardless that he is okay, as well as Murray there. You see them down there, obviously retired from the race in 18th and 19th, so unfortunate that their days came to such an early end. But like I said, the most important thing in an incident like that is that both drivers were able to walk away relatively unscathed, certainly shaken by the experience of frightening crash, but no harm, no foul there in terms of serious injuries at the very least. So hopefully both of them are able to bounce back from that as the season continues on here.
Definitely.
All right, we move on now to the feeder series at Silverstone. Actually, the first time, I believe, maybe ever, Formula One, F2, F3, and the regional F4 British Championship had an exhibition race as well. So you had F1 through F4 all on track. This weekend, we will take you through the results here side by side. You can pause to see where your favorite driver in these series ended up. But as for what we want to talk about, let's talk about the F2 championship battle right now. It's still Richard Verschoor leading the F2 standings, but the young American Jak Crawford gained a lot of ground this weekend with a second. He's second in the points right now. He won the feature race. What I was trying to say. So he's now closed the gap to Richard Verschoor in the championship fight. So Matthew, the question I have for you is: you've been talking a lot about what Cadillac is going to do with their driver lineup in 2026. I think you're very high on Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez as drivers that can give them the experience that the team needs in their first year. You've called both of them a couple of the greatest number two drivers we've seen in the modern era for Formula One. But when you look at what Jak Crawford is doing here, do you think if Cadillac wanted to go down the brand of trying to cater to the American market, so to speak, in their first year, do you think it's worth giving Jak Crawford the call up should he finish top 3 in the championship in Formula 2 this season?
I don't think so, in my opinion, just because I think if they go down the rookie route, it's not a smart thing. I really don't think it's smart, because if you have the opportunity, it depends on how much money you're willing to spend right at the end of the day. So, you leaked our text messages there in the sense what I was telling you. No, but all kidding aside, I think Checo, so Sergio Perez, and I think Valtteri Bottas would be the two perfect, both veterans, both two arguably the greatest number 2 drivers in the history of the sport with Red Bull and Mercedes at the time. I think they bring some sort of experience to the sport. So if they have 1 or 2 years left, then you get the opportunity to a young guy who probably won't be in F2 much longer in Jak Crawford, who, as the nationalism comes out as Americans, because in Formula One, we're not very well represented. Logan Sargent, unfortunately, his tenure came to a quick end over there. But it's exciting for us because we don't really see it happen, like at all, actually. So it would be awesome if he got consideration. I know he's currently is at Aston Martin. He's a reserve driver over there. I don't know if he'll be moving up anytime soon in that sense. I know he was with Red Bull, but obviously that contract ended, so he moved over. Unless Lance Stroll decides to retire and go play golf or tennis, one of the two I know he was really good at. I can't remember which one he said. And then Fernando Alonso, too. I know there's a lot of conversations on social media with Will Buxton about him that we were joking about in the chat, our Grid Network chat. But Jak Crawford, I think it's really awesome to see. I think he is doing really well. I think he's got 3 total wins in his career, whether it's features and sprint wins. That's awesome. So you think he would be the one if you want to bring that American idea to the sport, or American driver in the sense of. But I know we talked about Verschoor a little bit. He's probably going to win the championship. If he doesn't, it's going to be Crawford. I think it's going to be one of those two. Verschoor is kind of ancient in the sense of Formula 2. And it's not like he's been bad. He's had a rough start, but he's kind of really just took off this year. And if he does win, he's kind of going to be in a weird position where I think there's a lot of talent currently at the Formula 1 level that even the reserve drivers, I think, some of them are better, in my opinion, than some of the current drivers on the grid. So I think Formula 1's getting an issue here where there's not really any more room to grow. So it's great that there's going to be 2 extra seats on the grid. But are they just going to go to guys who are going to get phased out of their current teams, or are they going to bring back people from retirement or other reserve drivers? So it'll be interesting to see. But I think maybe if he gets a couple years under his belt as a reserve driver, continues to be a reserve driver, maybe he goes to Haas for a more American-type experience. Maybe he goes to Cadillac after he graduates from F2. So we'll see. I mean, you root for him. I really hope the best for all of them, especially guys like Felipe Drugovich, who I feel like still hasn't gotten an opportunity to shine yet, and he's been a reserve driver for, it feels like, decades. But obviously it's not that long. So it'll be interesting to see. Want to hear your thoughts. I know we were all pro Logan Sargent. I know someone made a comment during, I think, the Formula One movie for you about some Logan Sargent memorabilia. So.
Yes, I did go in my my 2023 Williams shirt, my Logan Sargent hat, and got an interesting compliment from one of my fellow theater attendees there, which was pretty interesting. But I think the general consensus with Logan at this point, in hindsight, is that maybe he needed one more year in F2, even though he had the super license points, and Williams wanted to put him in the seat when the opportunity came. Probably would have been best for his career if he had been able to go for the championship in 2023. In Crawford's particular case, Matthew, you mentioned 3 wins. This is actually his 3rd win this season. He's got 5 total, one in 2023 and another in 2024. So he's already in year 3. We talk about Verschoor obviously being ancient by F2 standards. He's in year 5. If he wins the championship, I don't know how realistic it is that he would be in the running for an F1 seat. Of course, we know with Drugovich, with Teo Porcher, winning an F2 championship doesn't always lead to an F1 seat, and even Oscar Piastri had to sacrifice a year of his career essentially doing reserve driver roles before he got the McLaren seat. So, but then again, Gabriel Bortoleto got the Sauber seat this year. So it's hardly unprecedented, but it's not necessarily a guarantee, and we've talked about this a lot of times in this show as well. If this were year 2 for Crawford, I would almost be hoping that he finishes second in the championship so that he can come back. But of course, that's the thing about F2, and it's not like NASCAR Xfinity where if you win the championship, you can come back if your team decides you need another year. You have to either move up to F1 or go race Super Formula or take a reserve role or something. You're not allowed to come back and defend your championship. So if Crawford were in year 2, I would say, it would be best for his career probably if he did finish second and could maybe give it one more year. But since he's in year 3, since he's racked off 3 wins now, I don't know. I think, again, you would have the concerns of what just happened with the Sargent situation. But I think, again, if they wanted to put an American in that car, there's nobody more qualified except for maybe you could make the argument Colton Herta. But I think Herta's stock has maybe fallen a little bit, especially with what Kyle Kirkwood is doing right now in the IndyCar series. And Herta finished second in IndyCar points last year, but I think would still need to finish close to the top 5 to technically qualify for that super license. I know he could technically do a whole bunch of FP1 sessions, I think, to get him over that 40 mark. It's the most silly, arbitrary rule that there is, but it might still be in place to stop him like it did a couple of years ago. But for Crawford, obviously, if he finishes top 3 here in this championship, or even, of course, wins it outright, then I think you've got a serious, claim that you can make. Maybe Cadillac should at least take a look at him and pair him with a more experienced driver, kind of like what Haas did when they came in 2016. They got their experienced driver in Roman Grosjean, and Esteban Gutierrez, I guess, had a year of experience himself at that point already, but he was kind of their young driver, their second driver that they announced when they joined the grid in 2016. So we'll keep an eye, of course, on Jak Crawford's season here as it continues on. I see a couple of comments here in the chat, so we'll get to those before we move on here as well. Jak Crawford will end up in IndyCar. It's a shame that all the F2 drivers will be left in limbo in F1 seats in the future, because there's a lot of politics, of course, that goes into that. It'd be wise for him to look at an IndyCar seat at the moment. I think that's certainly a possibility as well, as Denver mentioned. And Kobe suggesting as well, given the recent history of F2 drivers to IndyCar, maybe Versure could find a home stateside as good as an F2 season he's having. I think his F1 hopes for 2026 are extremely unlikely. And yeah, I think that just goes back to the conversation that we've had this year as well. When you have a series that is designed exclusively, again, it's not like here in the States, NASCAR Xfinity, you have your Justin Allgaiers and your AJ Allmendingers and Elliott Sadlers of the world that can come back and revive their careers here. It is strictly a feeder series to try to get to the pinnacle of motorsport. If you've spent 3 to 4 years in the series, how likely is it if you come back for a 5th that you're going to finally get that call? So in Versure's case, obviously it's interesting because he is leading the championship right now. But even if he does hold on to this championship, like you were suggesting, Matthew, I don't know that it's necessarily very likely that he would get that call. But in Jak Crawford's case, of course, you mentioned the Aston Martin reserve role. He's tested several of their most recent chassis at different points in the last couple of years, and he also has a reserve driver role as well with the Andretti team in Formula E. So I think he's a little bit more well-connected in that space than Richard Versure is, and maybe that could lead to an opportunity in the not-too-distant future. But again, we'll see how the rest of the season plays out as well.
Oh, definitely.
All right, and finally tonight, we got some news before we came in the air here this afternoon. Kaylee Bryson will be making her ARCA Menard Series West debut, and technically her NASCAR sanctioned debut as well, in the Cook Racing Technologies number 17 Chevrolet in the upcoming race this weekend at Sonoma. And Matthew, just want to get your thoughts real quick. We've been talking a lot about Kaylee on the Women in Motorsports program the last couple of years. She's had an interesting last couple of seasons with part of Toyota Racing Development Program, has now found a home in USAC and Trans Am. Kind of took me by surprise. I didn't think ARCA was really in the cards for her, not because she wasn't qualified to make such an appearance, but because I thought that the opportunity kind of passed her by and she was more focused on different series at this point in her career. But what's your reaction to the news that she's going to be driving in the ARCA West race this coming weekend at Sonoma?
Kind of a heck yeah. I love to see new faces in the sport. And granted, she's been in motorsport, but it's really cool. I like the idea, specifically like women in motorsport. If you talk about Taylor Reimer, you talk about Tony Breidinger starting in the USACs and the dirt cars and then coming over to stock cars. I think what Kaylee does a little differently is Trans Am, and she's won a few races regardless of the class she's in and stuff. There's veterans in there as well. But it's awesome, and it's not like she's never been in a stock car on a road course. She has been, and she's won in it. And I think it's really a great thing for these drivers to try to get in anything, whether it's a dirt car, whether it's just on a road course, just doing anything. I know I was helping people out over at Hornaday with Landon Lewis and Isaac Kitzmiller going out and doing a 8-hour Sebring road course. That's like an awesome opportunity. You saw Quapple did it, that same team, Low Country Motorsports. Awesome idea just to get in the seat. There's kids out there too. Carson Brown's a name you're going to be hearing a lot of. That kid will get in anything that has wheels and race. So it just shows that it's so awesome for these drivers, and then specifically Kaylee jumping on that train as well, getting in anything, whether it's dirt, whether it's asphalt. Now an ARCA West car, which I think you'll be able to see that in person, which is pretty awesome. So it's really cool to see, and you gotta love it for the sport. You see people from Trans Am like Thomas Annunziata got his first ARCA victory. Yep. He does a heck of a job in Trans Am if you pay attention over there with Nitro Motorsport. So I love to see it personally. I love the idea. Even women in motorsport, it's such an awesome opportunity for her to showcase her talent. Maybe not a lot of people know her from the asphalt world that don't pay attention to dirt, or vice versa. Now she can bring those dirt fans that she's grown a tremendous following over there, bring those to the ARCA West Series. So I'm always open for new people. Heck yeah, in my opinion. So I look forward to this coming week, and then Flow Racing. I pay for that subscription and watch a lot of other stuff. So hopefully I'm able to tune in for that one as well.
Yes, and you're right. I will be there with Brock Beard and LastCar.info this weekend in just a few days here. If you don't watch the Women in Motorsports show, you're not as familiar with Kaylee Bryson. She's the first woman to advance to the A main at the Chili Bowl. She did that in 2022 and then again in 2023, and Jade Avedissian did it as well that year, became the second female driver to accomplish that. And she's the reigning Trans Am SGT class champion. She moved up to XGT this year. Matthew, as you mentioned, has won a couple of races. There is the caveat there, but that is a smaller class. I think there were only 2 cars in her class for her first win, and I think she was the only car in her class in her most recent victory there. But she won several SGT races as well last year, as I think car counts ranging from 5 to 7. And there's plenty of great competition in that series as well for her to learn from veterans and should be able to share the track with them. So I think she's doing everything right for her career. She's made the business connections and hasn't had to worry about sponsorship as much, has been kind of in the right place at the right time there. Won a USAC midget race as well. So again, like I've always said on the Women in Motorsports show, I think her future career path is going to be something to keep an eye on. I think she's got a lot of talent, and coming up this weekend here, I don't know that she is going to be able to win the race, but I think if she is able to keep the car clean and bring it home in the top 10, I don't think that's an unrealistic goal for her. Maybe even top 5 if she catches some lucky breaks here. Of course, we know there is usually an increased level of competition when it comes to the West Series race at Sonoma. It's kind of like their Daytona 500, getting to share the track with the Cup Series. Although in the recent years of the trucks and Xfinity cars have been out there, we've seen some of the Cup drivers drop down to those series instead. I think Ryan Preece was maybe the exception when he won in that Stuart Haas car a couple of years ago. But some of the Xfinity drivers actually do the same thing from their series. They drop down into the West Series race. So there's going to be some good competition, but I think that's only going to benefit her in this opportunity that she's got making the start, and she's going to be in good equipment, like we mentioned, with the Cook Racing Technologies team. So certainly looking forward to that, and looking forward to the entire weekend there, covering that with Brock Beard for the 4th year in a row here. So we'll keep our eye on that as the weekend approaches here, and that's going to be our show for this evening. So I want to thank you all for tuning in, as always, for catching the Encore show here on Monday night. And be sure to follow the Grid Network at Grid Network TV on all our social media platforms, X/Twitter, Threads, or Blue Sky, whatever microblogging platform you're on these days. We are on all 3 of them. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn. Most importantly, subscribe to us right here on the YouTube channel and visit our website at gridnetworktv.com. If you really like what you saw tonight, you can take a few minutes after the show, like I mentioned at the start, to invest in our Patreon. Join Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in the Grid Network to help us pay the bills, keep us on the air throughout 2025 and beyond, and expand our coverage for you, the viewers. Or if you'd rather make a one-time contribution to us instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below. Any amount will help us continue to grow what we're trying to build here at this Motorsports Media outlet. Now, looking ahead to our upcoming schedule, Kobe will be back on Wednesday with Joshua Birch and Matt White. Stay tuned for our new NASCAR pre-race show format continuing on this weekend as well. To be determined on Women in Motorsports. I know we haven't gotten to record that in a couple of weeks here. And, of course, my availability is going to be up in the air this weekend as I head to Sonoma. And so on that note, Grid Live will be, I believe, as standard this weekend. I've been keeping the Around the Horn theme spirit going, joking about being on a 167-hour break, 191-hour break this week because the Encore show will shift to Tuesday. I'm flying back in Monday evening, so I will be on an airplane during the usual show time, but you can stay tuned for our usual Tuesday post-Sonoma show. Hopefully Brandon will be back for that as well. And then the week after that, it's a crazy travel week for me because I'm back here on the East Coast for 3 days, and then my mom's side of the family's having a reunion in Oregon. So I'm going to be back on the West Coast next weekend as well and flying back Monday again. So we'll see if we do another Tuesday show. We may do a Monday show with somebody filling in for me and Brandon taking the lead like we did when I was on break earlier this year. But we'll keep you all updated on that as those dates draw closer. In the meantime, Matthew, thank you again for filling in tonight. Any final thoughts before we sign off the air?
Looking forward to it. I think there's some NASCAR news that kind of just dropped, so stay tuned for Grid tonight about that information. Roval is one of the tracks we talked about, COTA, and just in the sense with NASCAR. So the last thing is just awesome opportunity, a lot of great racing this weekend. Looking forward to the coming week. Safe trip to you. I'm unfortunately still stuck in central New York for a very long time until I take a trip somewhere. But yeah, safe travels. I know you got a long flight ahead, so let's get off the air here quick so we can help you start packing and get out of Dodge. So appreciate you for letting me on the show. Appreciate everyone for tuning in as well.
Well, the packing's already done. I got that taken care of, or mostly done, I guess I should say. I'm on my laptop right now. I'm obviously going to need that when I'm out there this weekend, but I do have a 5 a.m. wake-up call tomorrow, so I'm going to get off the air here and get some sleep. Right before I get my final thoughts, I want to send my best to Will Rogers, going to be back this weekend in the number 70 car for the Cope Family Racing Team. And Will is a guy that, again, I try to keep my bias in check here, be professional on the air, but I did get to meet him at New Jersey Motorsports Park when he was racing K&N in 2018, and he's a beast on the road courses. I firmly believe that if he were in top equipment, he could be right up there battling SVG this weekend. Unfortunately, as much as I love Derek Cope and what he's trying to do as an owner still in this series, don't know that the equipment's going to allow him to get that far up the grid. But it is great to see him back at Sonoma nonetheless, and we're wishing him the best as he returns to the Xfinity Series this weekend in Mid-Deal that was just announced right before we came on the air. For Matthew Bro, for Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We will see you on Tuesday, regular time, a day later. Make sure you don't miss it and don't miss the rest of our programming this week. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. We'll see you soon.